Okay, the third entry in the Splatoon series is here, and the early reviews have just landed, so is it any good? Let's go find out. Now, this one is kinda interesting because many have been kind of somewhat surprised at the rate at which these games have been coming out. I mean, I know plenty of folks saw Splatoon 2 as something of a kind of 1.5 update, so the hope is that this one is a touch more substantial. I mean, personally, I don't have any issue with the kind of rate they've been coming out, but you have kind of seen that said about it. I mean, I'm thrilled that Nintendo are putting more of these out, and it's, you know, it is easy to forget that Splatoon 2 came out 5 years ago. So yeah, it's due a new entry. So yeah, I guess let's take a look what the reviews have to say. Is this new entry off the hook? Sorry. Does it add enough to make it a must-buy, I guess? Let's go find out, big man. Right, first up is Hero and Cryer writing at Games Radar. For the most part they seem to like it, but do note that this latest entry seems to struggle somewhat in managing its appeal between kind of like newcomers and veterans, calling it something of a precarious balancing act. They add that Splatoon 3's campaign feels like it's caught between the more simplistic offerings of a hero shooter and the genius of Octo expansion, and it doesn't want to settle for either one. They go on to talk about the neat quality of life additions added to the game, and the improvements to multiplayer, but conclude by saying that there's excellence in Splatoon 3, it just doesn't quite hold up for the campaign. It's scored 4 out of 5 here, and this feels like kind of a well-considered assessment for what is primarily a multiplayer game. Rebecca Stone for Twinfinite shares that this new entry is the same reliable fun the franchise has always been, and this one adds the much-needed improvements that fans clamoured for. But she adds a note of caution, advising players to be aware of just how much new content there is here, before committing to a purchase. 4 out of 5. Okay, Martin Robinson for Eurogamer points out that in the run-up to the release of Splatoon 3, there was a feeling that the game is only offering up more of the same, and he goes on to say that that's broadly a fair assessment, and that the biggest additions to this game don't feel like the kind of thing that can be applauded too enthusiastically. He adds that the series, now 7 years into its life, finally has some of the basic features you'd expect of a contemporary online multiplayer game. There's no knocking the core experience here. In fact, it's described as polished and impeccably executed. It's more just a word of gentle warning that this is very much just more Splatoon, and for many, that's not quite enough. Sure, there's no shock of it being new anymore, but with Splatoon 3 you are getting a sense of a special series that's really hitting its stride. Oliver Brandt for Vooks calls this entry more of an evolution than a revolution, but adds that this is not really a bad thing for the series that has been so consistently strong. It boasts an utterly fantastic story mode, some great new weapon additions, and tweaks to the tried and tested formula you've come to know and love. Splatoon 3 is everything you'd hoped it would be, and more. 5 out of 5. The lovely Alex Olney over at Nintendo Life shares how Splatoon 3 is more of the same, but refined to borderline mechanical perfection, adding that it feels like the development team has solved every problem the Splatoon community was bleating on about. He closes by saying it's missing that big new idea, but it still comes out as the pinnacle of the series and the pinnacle of shooters on Switch. 9 out of 10. Anna Diaz over at Polygon notes how this goofy shooter has quickly gone from a niche interest to something of a staple of Nintendo's catalogue, but adds that this rise to prominence as one of Nintendo's key franchises has been one of baby steps. This new entry is seemingly no different, as she explains that it lacks major new changes, but this is made up for with quality of life tweaks. Overall, she calls it a game that feels like it's treading water, and it isn't really evolving much. It reaches for the excitement of the original, but can't quite grasp it. Matthew Castle at VGC praises the game for its unique nature, neat new table turf battles, and great quality of life improvements across the board, but points out its feature set may read more like generous patch notes than a bold invitation to a world of ink-flinging revolution. He concludes by noting that it's a bit weird to see Nintendo deliver such a safe sequel. Die-hard fans will be happy, but casual players may find it a bit bare overall. 3 out of 5. Giovanni Colantonio, writing at Digital Trends, calls Splatoon 3 a rare specimen in the multiplayer world, praising the development team for releasing what's a fully formed and carefully constructed game out of the gate, rather than it being a good proof of concept that will live and die by the developer's ability to keep up. 4 out of 5. Right, so that's just a handful of quotes showing what folks had to say, I have linked all of the reviews mentioned in the description below, so please do go click through and read through their work and see what they had to say. Let me know in the comment section if you plan on picking this one up. Generally, the reviews seem pretty good for it. At time of recording, the Metacritic score for it stands at 84. Just by way of comparison, the score for Splatoon 2 eventually landed on a score of 83. Make of that what you will, but it's heading in the right direction, at least by 1 point at time of recording. So yeah, generally I think it's been well received and well liked. Mostly the comments seem to be that the multiplayer is rock solid. The single player is okay by comparison. Like, the strength lies in its multiplayer, which you'd expect for a game of this nature. And broadly, the comments seem to be like it's doing more of the same. It's doing it really well. There's not the strides that you'd expect, to see from the series. It's just kind of doing more of the same and doing it really well. So fans will be really happy, I think. But broadly, it's not really pushing forward in any kind of meaningful sense. Good, not great, I think would be a fair assessment. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you enjoyed this one, let me know by leaving a squid emoji in the comments. Cheers.